Hello, and welcome to the Kessel Rundown Podcast, Episode 2. And this week we are going over Episode 1, Phantom Menace. We are very excited to break down this very controversial 1999 film from the return of Star Wars from George Lucas. After 16 years in the darkness, this is what we got. So we're going to dive into that here in a minute. But first, Hunter's going to break down some news developments in the Disney Parks world and as well as some Lego news and other stuff. So go ahead, Hunter.
Awesome. Well, I just choked on coffee right now, so
Oh,
my throat is closing at the moment. But starting off with the Galactic Star-cruiser at Walt Disney World, Hollywood Studios, Travis Feinstein, a Walt Disney Imagineer, and Matt Martin, a Lucasfilm franchise content and strategy employee, are featured in a newly released video by Disney explaining what the guest will experience on this adventure. As a passenger, says Martin, you get to choose your own path with the Resistance, First Order, or you can become a scoundrel. There's even a love story on board. During your stay aboard the Halcyon, you can deboard and explore Galaxy's Edge, Black Spire Outpost, also allowing you to explore Hollywood Studios. The very first place the Halcyon ever traveled to was Batuu, says Feinstein. Guests will follow the same route the Halcyon took on its maiden voyage. The time frame of the Galactic Star-cruiser takes place in between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. And according to Martin, we will see Rey and Kylo meet up again for probably the first and maybe the only time between the two films. So to me, that's very interesting because, they don't really elaborate on that time period between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker in any novels or really anything. So I guess this is like our chance to see what was going on between those two movies. And this part...
sorry.
Oh, you're good. Go on.
I was just gonna say that Star Wars has a habit of doing this. They've between episodes 2 and 3 we get the Clone Wars. Episodes 3 and 4 we get Rebels, and between episodes, I guess 3 and 4 as well, we get Rogue One. Like they're in Solo and
Bad
stuff
Batch,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah, Bad Batch. They're they like bridging the gap. They did it for both trilogies, and I expect more kind
Well,
of.
they did do it for the sequel trilogy with Star Wars Resistance, which I mean, I watched it. It
Did
was
not.
it wasn't amazing, but the second
It looked
season
a
toward the
little
end
like
had some really good Star Wars moments. It was made for kids. It was aimed at
yeah.
kids.
It looked a
Uh,
little like I think the rating was like Y7. I was like, I don't know about
yeah, but I watched it because it's Star Wars, and I was like, okay, there's got to be some lore in here, and there was quite a few. Dave Filoni likes putting in stuff. Just to finish off the Halcyon, this part you probably won't like to hear, but to board the Halcyon, the 2-night intergalactic adventure, you will have to pay the mouse a few dollars. A 2-night stay for a party of two is going to run you a total of $4,809.
that. Jeez, that's more than my honeymoon.
That's crazy. Yeah, 3 guests is $5,299, and 4 guests will have you spending around $6,000. This does include food and beverages aboard the Star Cruiser, but this excludes alcohol. So I mean, that's kind of that's kind of lame,
Six
in my
grand for
opinion.
4 people. That's
6 grand, 4 people, no alcohol. You can buy alcohol separately, but it's not included. And it also includes one quick service meal at Docking Bay 7, which is it's like an eatery, like a quick service place on Batuu, Galaxy's Edge. So you get one meal when you're at Galaxy's Edge, and then you get the planned dinners and breakfast that they have aboard the Star Cruiser. So I mean, it's cool. Valet parking is also included, and then you get like a special Star Wars Magic Band, which stores all your personal information, your credit card, so you can easily just access things at the parks. I don't know if you know this about me, but during the pandemic, I got like this weird fascination with theme parks and everything that has to do with theme parks. I've been researching Disney World, Six Flags, Universal, and I've fallen in love with everything that way. So just to hear this, it feels like a cash grab to me. It doesn't feel genuine, and whenever you look at what's going on in the videos they produce and showcasing the Halcyon, it doesn't look good at all.
hmm.
I don't see. I mean, it's Disney, so this is gonna stay around for a while because they put a lot of money into this. But if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't see this thing. If it was just up to public opinion, I wouldn't see it standing for like 5 more years or so,
Right. Well,
unless they do some major overhaul.
when you put 4 billion into a franchise,
Yeah, I kind of
four
have to
billion
do some stuff.
dollars, you gotta do something. Yeah. I I'm not a I don't I've never been to Disney. I've never been to Universal. My dad went right when my dad's like hates Star Wars. I don't really know why he did this, but I think it was for work or something and he just swung by Universal Studios. He got me this R2D2 mug
Oh,
that's
wow,
yeah, it's huge and it's got like it
that is
juts out in
it's the
places where the
size of my
buttons are.
head. My God,
But he rode all the rides and stuff. I was really jealous because I actually enjoy Star Wars and he doesn't
awesome.
care. But I saw the illustration on the website for the it's a Wookiee with like a sword shaped lightsaber. Like it looks like a
Yeah,
broadsword.
that's
It's
that is the Padawan Yaga, which is he's featured in the main High Republic novels and also the comic book. So releasing soon, there's going to be a 5-issue comic book detailing the adventures of the Halcyon during the High Republic era. I'm not too sure when that's coming out, but it is coming out soon. And also a High Republic novel, Mission to Disaster, which releases next month, I believe. Right now, it's available on ebook, but physically, it's not available until about next month. It shows one of the first times the Halcyon shows up in Star Wars canon, and then we're gonna see it, of course, during Han and Leia's honeymoon. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. It's gonna be pretty
ah,
cool. I'm excited to see
me.
where it goes. Not really excited about the park, like wise, you know.
I'm not gonna pay $6,000
Oh no, yeah,
for anything
I'm
like
not.
that.
I'm not. The one thing that is intriguing though, with with the 6,000 comes free sabacc lessons. So I mean, I think I kind of have to. Yeah, yeah, I know.
They'll
I
teach
kind of
you how
have
to
to,
shoot dice for 6K. Yeah.
dude. Well, moving on to some Lego Star Wars news. I'm a huge fan of Lego Star Wars. Recently, I've been
Mhm.
replaying Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga, and it's like nostalgia is crazy. But new gameplay has been released for Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga, alongside exclusive comments from the game's team of developers. This is a quote from lead sound designer Tessa Verplank. I probably butchered that name, but that's fine. This is the ultimate experience of going everywhere in the universe as whatever character you want to be in Star Wars. There are over 400 unlockable characters in this game. Yeah, it's
So
crazy.
that's a lot more than the old game.
Oh yeah.
I played it on the
Oh yeah.
Wii. There was like 20 characters.
Yeah, 400. So it's crazy. It spans episode 1 through 9, and there's talks of Rogue One DLC, solo DLC. I'm pretty excited about that. Alongside the classic story missions Lego Star Wars is known for, you can also partake in a massive open world that changes based on the era you're playing in. So if you're flying around in the classic original trilogy era, you can see Imperial Star Destroyers coming out, and then you got to destroy it. If you're playing in, let's say, the prequel era, you can see those massive separatist ships coming in. You got to destroy it. Just it changes based off whatever you're playing. You can take on massive space battles or land your ship inside massive enemy capital ships and capture them. During the interview, our director Josh Pick describes the way he and his team designed the many environments you will see. They built the ships entirely out of Lego bricks, which means they actually built everything in real life, scanned them digitally, and then implemented them into the game. So every environment that you see is a Lego brick, which is insane to me. It's crazy. They also use the same technology from the Lego movie. So the Lego movie used, I don't know how to describe this. I'm going to sound like a complete idiot, talking about this because I know nothing about it. But when you watch the Lego movie, it looks like, they're actual Legos. It doesn't look digital at all. It looks like they did stop motion, which in fact they didn't. It's all CGI and animated. They used that same process for all the cutscenes in this game. So it looks really good. When you look at the trailers, it looks like stop motion, but it's not. It's crazy. And then yesterday, Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga has gone gold, which in the video game world means it is completely done. Everything is done with the game. All they have to do is ship it and it's ready to ship. And it does release on April 5th. So that is really close. That's really, really close. If they wanted to, it's gone gold. They can move that release date up a little, like a
Yeah.
few weeks. They could do it. They can do a surprise drop like tomorrow. Who knows?
Is it
But
a all consoles kind of thing, or is it a PC
I
game?
think it's everything. I think it's a console, Nintendo Switch, PC. I'm gonna get it on PC. Just I get everything on PC just to have everything. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we get it. You're cool.
put a few dollars in this gaming rig. So I gotta show
Yeah.
it off. So going on to this next bit of news, it is kind of sad, but I'll explain actually before I say but. So Tom Veitch, the author of the Star Wars Dark Empire comics, has passed away at the age of 80 on February 18th after a battle with coronavirus. Tom Veitch, alongside Timothy Zahn, are considered to be the main reason why Star Wars survived the 90s. So in between the original trilogy and the prequel era, there really wasn't a lot to go off of. Star Wars Legends was kind of in its infancy, and people were just kind of looking forward to what's next. They really didn't know if there was going to be a next. They didn't know the prequel trilogy was happening, and Star Wars was kind of dying. Star Trek was rising, and Star Wars is kind of losing its popularity until the Dark Empire and Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire were published, and that kind of brought the buzz back. People love new characters like Thrawn. They love to see what happened after Luke blew up the Death Star for the second time, or Lando for the first time. I mean, after Darth Vader had died, they love to see what happens just after the fact. And Tom Veitch was the main author of the comics, which heavily inspired the rise of Skywalker. Because in the Dark Empire comics, Emperor Palpatine comes back through cloning, and I believe Luke does too. And his clone is actually called Luke. There's two U's, so it's Luke and Luke who are fighting. It's really silly, but yeah,
Hunter and Hunter.
yeah, Hunter. Yeah, it's a bittersweet thing just knowing that he created something that's gonna outlast him is really, yeah, it's really nice. And then I guess we should end it with some happy news about John Williams. John Williams is confirmed to be returning to compose the main theme and score for Obi-Wan Kenobi. I know you're excited about this.
Yes, I'm pumped. Our Twitter account something like King is back or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm really I just love John Williams. He one of the only well, not one of the only, but one of the main redeemable things about the sequel trilogy to me, especially the ninth episode, is the soundtrack or the score.
Yeah.
And John Williams like never fails. I mean, he run through his Wikipedia, what he's done. It's E.T., Indiana Jones, Harry Potter. The Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban score is, I think, like the greatest hour and 20 minutes of music ever. I
Yeah.
listen to it all the way through like once every couple weeks. It's incredible.
This theme is like I think it's
I
the
mean,
most popular piece of like music like ever right now. It has to be. It's so recognizable.
yeah. That's the thing, right? You think about like what are the sounds of Star Wars? What are the sounds of Harry Potter? What are the sounds of Indiana Jones? Sounds of E.T. and Jaws and all these movies. It's
Mhm.
music that John Williams created. So
Yeah.
hats off to him. He's 90 years old. His birthday was probably a month ago. He's still grinding it out, still making
Dude,
great
he's in
stuff.
the studio every day.
I know. They did
Not
Empire Strikes Back in like a week.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
crazy. That's insane to wrap your head around. But yeah, I'm excited to hear about Kenobi. I didn't know who was composing it
Mhm.
because in Rogue One, Michael Giacchino composed the score for Rogue One, and in Solo, John Powell did, and they captured John Williams' like presence so well. But you can't do better than the man himself.
Right. I thought Rogue One was great. The
Oh,
score
definitely.
is great, but the was it? I don't remember the title song. Just like your father or something like that. It's man, there's an emotion to Rogue One, the music, because obviously the whole movie. You're like, all these people are gonna die, so
Yeah, they're not in
the
episode 4.
yeah, the music's very melancholy, and I love it. But yeah, hats off to John Williams. I'm excited to hear what he's got in store.
Yeah, well, that about does it for the news this week. And until next week, that we have more news, I guess we'll get into the Phantom Menace. And Ethan will carry this one for me today.
Yeah.
He has fresh eyes on this movie. I haven't seen it in a few months. So,
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this movie. It's very controversial. I don't know. I was talking to some friends about it, and they were like, "Are you serious?" I sent them. We'll do rankings of the movies at some point when we're done reviewing
yeah.
most of them or all of them. But this was a little higher than it probably should have been in my initial, just off the top of the head rankings. I think I had it like fifth or sixth.
It's not bad. It's not
Yeah,
bad.
and personally, I watched Phantom Menace so much as a boy, like as like a 3, 4, 5 year old, that I broke the VHS tape. I watched it like every single day. I just mostly because of Darth Maul, like the last 20 minutes of the movie. You know what I mean? This movie really has a lot of haters, probably for good reason, and we'll go through some of the reasons tonight. So just to walk through, obviously, I hope everyone that's listening to this, if there are any listeners, thank you. You've probably seen the movie quite a few times, like us. But I'll run through the synopsis. First 10 minutes of the movie start out on a great foot. I think the movie, I think it starts off great. I love the plot. Honestly, the political intrigue stuff we can get into later about things we like and things we don't like, but that's one thing that I really enjoy is the politics of Star Wars. So you see, after the opening crawl, a ship is approaching the trade blockade. It's Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and two pilots who we don't really ever learn their names because they're about to die. They get through the trade blockade just basically by force. They're just like, hey, let us in. And they go to the kind of ring-shaped blockade ship that the
Holker class.
Separatists.
Yeah.
What's it called?
I believe it's a Holker class, but I could be mistaken.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, the Holker class. It's kind of like a floating donut.
Yeah.
And basically the Nemoidians, so Viceroy Gunray and his boys are holding it down. We will not be doing any impressions just out of
God no. Yeah.
Just
Respect
out of respect for the allegations that have come with
respect for
Nemoidian.
humankind. We will not be doing the Nemoidian voice.
Even though mine is really good. Anyways,
we'll take your word for it.
Yeah. So ostensibly, which is my favorite word, as you've learned, the Jedi are there for negotiations, and they're cocky about it, whatever. And the Nemoidians are basically there to hold them hostage. Once they figure out they're Jedi, they're like, "Holy crap! Who sent Jedi?" And here we get the first, just so heavy-handed, this Palpatine thing. We haven't really met Palpatine at this point, but about halfway through the movie, a blind person could be like, "Hey, that's the same guy," which is probably on purpose. But anyways, they go through their negotiations, which are a farce, and the Nemoidians send droids to come kill the Jedi. They escape and then see, oh crap, they are building a droid army. The Separatists are building a droid army. They do not plan on negotiating. They have something darker in store, and we see this is getting out of hand. Now there are two of them. We see that Sidious has an apprentice who he threatens the Viceroy with. And then I believe we go from there to Naboo, where they're trying to evacuate Princess, or Queen Amidala, I guess at this point. She was just elected.
Yeah.
And basically it's being occupied by the Separatists, and they have to leave the planet and meet Jar Jar on the way. We can talk more about Jar Jar in a minute.
Thank
but
God for him.
Yeah, so they meet Jar Jar, they meet the Gungans. Again, fascinating characters.
Do you want to try your impression of Boss Nass? I would love to do mine.
Me so no like the Naboo. I can't even do it.
That probably killed a few ears.
Yeah, I didn't even hear yours.
Oh, you're good.
Anyways, so they Jar Jar, Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan, before they go to see the Queen, they have to escape Gungan City. Jar Jar basically off of his probation that he's on with the Gungans. And then we meet the Queen. We get some cool lightsaber tricks, some really unnecessary Obi-Wan spins, and then we're off Naboo. So they are heading on the ship to Coruscant, and I don't really quite know how they get to Tatooine because they're in Naboo and they're going to Coruscant, but Tatooine's in the outer rim. Not really sure how that works since I think Naboo is mid-rim, but we'll give Lucas a pass.
In the middle. Yeah.
Anyways, that lack of continuity though presents a wonderful time. We get to go to Tatooine where they have basically been stranded, and we meet Watto, which we will also not be doing an impression of. We meet boy Anakin, who is 9 years old, I think, and very feisty. And him and Padme have this awkward, weird, cringy thing. And we basically stay on Tatooine for, I don't know, almost half the movie. And the plot, doesn't stop, but it just kind of bogs down a little bit. We spend a lot of time on Tatooine. Yeah, so we meet Darth Maul, like in the flesh. He's coming to find them, basically. That's later on. But then we get the whole pod racing sequence. We get basically the realization that Anakin is who he is, right? He's the what Mace Windu will later say that he's the one that was prophesied. But Qui-Gon reads his midichlorians, and we got a whole sequence where he's like, "Oh my gosh, Yoda doesn't even have this much, basically like force juice." And yeah, so we get Anakin is moved off Tatooine back to Coruscant, and they meet the soon-to-be defunct Chancellor, to be deposed, I guess I should say.
Chancellor Valorum.
Yeah, Chancellor Valorum. Chancellor Valorum. I move for a vote of no confidence. He gets booted out by Queen's decoy and Palpatine, whose plan is going, just according to how he thought it was going to go. Yeah, it's going swimmingly at this point. And yeah, so they get Palpatine in office with emergency powers, quote unquote. I'm using quote fingers for our listeners. Then he's able to basically just seize power. And this begins the end of the Republic. This is the beginning of the end of what Padme will later say. This is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause. It's it's politics. It's evil disguised as loving politics. And from there we go back to Naboo, where actually there's a little sequence in between where we get the whole Mace Windu thing that we'll talk about later, with Qui-Gon saying that Obi-Wan will train Anakin and stuff like that. And we go back to Naboo, and we have the big battle. Anakin does some cool stuff kind of on accident with the ship, reveals his pilot prowess. We get a lot.
He tried spinning, which turned out to be a good trick.
Which is a good trick, yeah. We get Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon fighting Maul, which is top tier Star Wars for me. I think for you as well. And great music, great everything. Wish we had more screen time, but yeah, that's just the overview, the synopsis, a little rundown of the movie. They eventually, Obi-Wan cuts Maul in half, dies. We get back to Naboo at the end, where a lot of the Jedi Council is there watching Qui-Gon's body be burned, and Yoda has the ominous exchange with Mace about "You're always too Sith, no more, no less," which is kind of true, kind of not. And so turns out, okay, Maul's gone, who's next? And that's, they pan to Palpatine to end the movie, basically, to be like, he's the Sith Lord.
Which is great, yeah.
Just in case you didn't know from the 35 other hints we've given you.
The big slap in the face,
Yeah. So that's pretty much how it goes, and I missed some small stuff that we might talk about, but sets up for, within canon, a 10-year gap before episode 2, so it's definitely a controversial one, and we can dive into everything we like and dislike, and there are a lot of both. But that was the first Star Wars in 16 years. And like you said, when you're talking about the comic book authors that kept Star Wars alive in the 90s, there wasn't much. There wasn't much in those 16 years, and people were doubtful that there would ever be Star Wars. There were rumors, and we finally got what we got, and it's something.
It's definitely something. You have to also look at these videos of these people at the midnight premiere of the Phantom Menace, and they are in full decked out Jedi robes. And I think at that point, the only Jedi robes they had seen is from Luke. So they didn't really. Black. Yeah, they had never had like a thought, or they didn't know what the Jedi Council was or going to be. They just kind of dressed up, which is so cool to see the ingenuity of Star Wars fans back in the day. But they were all dressed up. Some of them even had like their makeshift Jar Jar ears or whatever, because they seen them in the trailers, and they're like, oh, they don't know much about this, but like they're like, oh, that's a cool character. Turns out they were probably very embarrassed whenever the movie was over, walking out of that theater. But it's yeah, like you said, it was first Star Wars in 16 years, and people were excited, and a lot of people didn't like it, but I think it's aged like a fine wine. You can appreciate it a lot more now that other wines are on the shelves. Which is
it's one of those things where if you watch it with a sense of realism, with a sense of not taking yourself too seriously, I took notes as I was watching it the other night, and for about half the movie I was like, man, this does not work cinematically. Like, what is going on? There's too many cuts. The tone is shifting. I kept thinking about that video of George Lucas when he sees the final cut for the first time. Have you seen this? Have you seen the video?
I think I have.
He just leans back in his chair and he's like says a bunch of curse words under his breath. and then all the new we were both born like after this movie came out and shortly after, but and we grew up with this in our life. This was Star Wars to us. Um,
Mhm.
this at least the first two episodes, and I remember when the third one came out, and then Clone Wars, and just knowing the whole infrastructure of the Republic, and just finding it fascinating, and finding all these characters like
Yeah,
they were just
definitely,
part of my life. So for us, we're gonna look on it with kinder eyes than someone who's like 40 or 50 might.
definitely.
But it is what it is. That's probably how my kids will look at the sequels.
Definitely, yeah. You think about you see Star Wars Celebration, all these generations of Star Wars fans, and there's so many young kids dressed up as Rey, so
Hmm.
many little kids as Finn, and even you get some Captain Phasmas here and there. But it's who they see and who they look up to. I remember dressing up as Anakin. I think it was 2007, so it was 2 years after Revenge of the Sith came out, and I remember dressing up as Anakin. And my dad never liked Star Wars. He was always a Star Trek fan. But he'd be like, "Why are you dressing up as him?" Like he was supportive, of course. Like those movies are kind of bad. Like, like I was like, it was Star Wars for me. It was
Yeah,
Anakin was like the best Skywalker in my opinion. He was really the only Skywalker that I really connected with because that's who I
right.
watched. I never really watched the original trilogy growing up. I of course I've seen it, but I was so transfixed on you know Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, that dynamic. Never really had an interest in Luke, but I mean that's something.
Yeah,
And just to
I
go back on George Lucas, sorry, before we go any further,
uh-huh.
you were talking about that video of them after watching the final cut. I don't know if you've seen this video, but it usually gets posted without context. But they're doing the storyboard of the Battle of Naboo, and George Lucas points at Jar Jar, and they're talking about the CGI and pulling off the CGI and making the CGI look as real as possible. But he points to Jar Jar and says, "Jar Jar is the key to all of this." And that is taken out of context so many times in the funniest situations. I'll have to send you a clip of that video once we wrap filming. It's so funny.
Yeah, I will get to that battle later. It does not it's for the time they used the best technology they could get their hands on, but man, it
Mhm.
looks bad in 2022. I prefer the prop like New Hope props with they built the whole miniature set and
Mhm.
moved the camera through, and that looks better than this. But yeah, Jar Jar being not just like he was just like a token character, like like a ridiculous side guy, who popped from time to time. Think of a comparison. No, I don't know, like almost like a droid. Like he's there.
Yeah, he
Doesn't
was
really
there to
like
sell toys.
right, but I'm saying if
Yeah.
they had written a movie with him as kind of like a side character,
Oh
one
yeah.
that wasn't like the beavers in Narnia. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
they're cool and they're important to the story. Like I don't want them to be the main character. Like I don't want them to be always tagging along with Lucy and Emmett and Peter and Susan the whole book, right? They're there for like 5 minutes. Jar Jar
Yeah.
had his place, right? The Gungans, I think, there's a foundation for some really interesting conversations about indigenous species and occupation and what that does to certain communities and stuff like that. Like that foundation for that conversation was laid there in part because of Jar Jar's people, which sounds so weird to say, but I don't want him to be the main character, and he was much too central in the movie, I think, for my taste.
I agree.
So I'll just run through some things that I really enjoyed about the movie, I guess, so we can get off the negative for a little bit. The first 10 minutes to me, I mean, not to go all like Marvel universe, but like just some lightsaber fights and some explosions. I'm sure that drew the fans in when they were sitting in the theater. It had been so long since the Death Star was destroyed for the second time. They just see like the Nemoidians be like, "Oh, gotta blow up their ship, and it just awesome looking explosion, ripped those two pilots. And then when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are discussing negotiations, and excuse me, and they hold their breath and fight the droids basically in this like cloud of toxic gas. It's really cool, and it sets a cool tone for like the direction that the action was going. I think a much more choreographed, elegant kind of fighting. I really enjoy that. We can get into the styles of fighting when we do Attack of the Clones, because that has a lot more like twirling and flipping and stuff that we can discuss. But the scene with them fighting the droids, and in particular Obi-Wan, I don't know if you remember this. He takes a laser. There's a droid off to his right and a droid straight in front of him. Droid shoots at him. He catches it and kind of like Yoda, like you know how Yoda like redirects the energy. It kind of catches it in his saber and turns the saber and like redirects it to his right to kill the droid next to him, and it looks so cool. And I just caught it on a rewatch, and I was like, that is so sick.
Probably so many small details in these movies that we need to catch.
Yeah, stuff like that. Like I think works. Like I really buy Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon as characters. Qui-Gon as the kind of stoic rule breaker who doesn't necessarily believe in the dogma as much as like Mace or Yoda. And then Obi-Wan is as he's kind of a naive, kind of a hothead at times. It's definitely, as we see in the mall fight later, he's got some emotion, and we saw in Clone Wars and Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, like he's not afraid to show his emotion.
Especially in Clone Wars. Yeah.
He's a different kind of Jedi, I think, and that's made pretty clear in the movie. So that's something I liked. Another thing that I really enjoyed. I'll let you rattle off a couple in a minute, but I really loved the visuals. Not necessarily like we were talking about Naboo earlier, not necessarily that kind of stuff, but ships and the underwater world, Gunga City, and stuff like that. I think it's really inventive. I mean, that say all you want about George Lucas, but man's got a vision, and some of that stuff looked incredible.
That's true.
So that would be my second thing. Do you have anything that sticks out?
Yeah, it kind of following on your point, but kind of abandoning everything you said at the same time. I believe the CGI worked for this movie, and I believe the CGI worked for the prequels. I don't think they could have captured what George Lucas had envisioned if it wasn't for the CGI at the time. In the early, almost the 1900s, that's not true. In the early 2000s, CGI was booming. This green screen process was just taking off, and George Lucas used it to its fullest extent, and I think he did a really, really great job, especially with the only thing I can think of right now is Dexter's Diner in episode 2, which we shouldn't be talking about yet. But the world building he does with the CGI that you can't really do with models and cutouts, it's amazing. He also mixes models. I saw something, don't know if it's true, I just wanted to bring it up. But the production and props team for the prequel trilogy used more models than they did in the original trilogy. Dexter's Diner, I believe, is a miniature in episode 2. And a lot of things that you see are miniatures. They just incorporate CGI and green screen technology in it. And I think the tone they were giving off and everything kind of mixed, just the world building as a whole, these fantastical worlds that we see. It can't really be done with that, at the time. Now they can be, of course. But at that time, they couldn't be done. Lucas's vision couldn't be done by standard means. It had to be done with the latest and greatest technology, which happens to look like the Windows XP background 20 years later.
Yeah. I'm thinking just of the Naboo scene when the droid ships go through the bubble. It's literally like it does look like the Windows background. It's just like green landscape. It's all animated. There's no like a real I think the Undergungans are animated, and Jar Jar's mocap, I think.
Yeah. I'm at best.
Yeah, but it's like that part's cringy to me. The actual landscape of Naboo, like the town. What's Theed? I think is the
Theed. Theed is Theed's the name.
The capital city. Theed looks great. It looks like a Venetian kind of Italian city, and it's got the canals and stuff. I loved it as soon as they just pan out and it's like this large landscape all done by CGI. in 20 years later, it would have been incredible, but it just
Hmm.
looks a little tough. But I agree that the CGI does work as far as like characters go. Like
Yeah,
Boss Nass looks pretty good.
he does. Yeah.
I think they invent a lot of technology for this movie, or
They did. I don't know what they invented, but I know that different filmmaking practices were taken away from the production of episode one. I could see you probably looking it up right now, but
yeah,
kind of like right now, modern day Mandalorian. It was the first production to use it, but it certainly popularized it. I don't know what it's called, but they have the huge screen and they film inside on sound stages, but it looks like they're outside without using any green screen or CGI. So yeah, Star Wars does start a lot of trends in filmmaking, which is awesome.
I'm reading about they shot this. They shot episodes 2 and 3 entirely on digital, which was invented like 20 or 15 years before. But not many movies were entirely shot in digital
No.
before this. But Phantom Menace was shot in the 35 millimeter. I don't really know much about that kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
um, I thought that they honestly, one of the main things I had written down from that like sequence where they meet Jar Jar and everything. I tried to quote it. I don't know how I spelled it. You ready?
Maybe.
Okada! Oh, 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 oh. It flips into the water.
Oh man.
Oh.
Yeah.
And when he walks
I,
into Gunga City, and he's afraid. Like, he walks in, and everyone around him immediately knows, oh no,
it's
that's
Jar Jar.
that's big skid away. Um, and he just goes, oh, so good to be home. And like, everyone's like running away from him, like avoiding him at all costs. And he's like, oh, isn't it good to be home? It just cracks me up.
He's in big doo doo this time.
Yeah, yeah.
Gungan City also, gonna talk about it. CGI, it's awesome. It's what I believe. George Lucas obviously had a vision going into the original trilogy that he couldn't carry out with conventional means. I believe that like Gungan City was just like a huge like moment of pride for George Lucas. It had to be. Also, naming your city off a species, it's like Human City. Kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, kind of lazy, but it's okay.
it's Gunga City, right? Not Gungan
Gunga,
City.
it's Gunga. Oh my gosh, are we? I thought it was Gungan City. I mean, it could be Gunga City, but still,
Uh,
Huma City, Human City.
I I googled Gungan City and it's called Otagunga,
Oh my gosh. Okay, well then I'm
which
proven
is
wrong. Oh, it's a Gunga.
which means Gunga City.
Yeah. George Lucas thought he was slick.
So cool.
Going into what you told me that you had liked earlier, you can explain more your thoughts behind the midichlorians. Personally, I don't know the fits about midichlorians. In the original trilogy, the Force is kind of like a mysterious entity. The Force is just, for lack of a better word, a force that surrounds every single person and every single
Yeah.
living thing and non-living thing in the galaxy. And some people have the ability to manipulate the force to their own with their own will, and some people don't. And I kind of like the mystery around that, but I do like the explanation, science behind everything, because everything does have its beginning in science. And midichlorians are a good way of describing the force in a way, I would say. And I guess
Mhm.
you have your own thoughts and feelings over it.
Yeah. So when you think about sci-fi and just and this is not entirely my own analysis. Again, shout out to Binge Mode. I don't know if you've ever listened to the Binge Mode Star Wars stuff, but they did this bit on hard sci-fi versus soft sci-fi.
Yeah.
And so like soft sci-fi would be like in Harry Potter. There's no explanation of how magic works. What how Muggleborns are born with this
Mm.
ability. How is the power channeled through your arm to the wand? That is never. They dive into some wand lore, but they don't really dive into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then you have
So
Dune, which is the
wow,
complete
I've never
opposite. Yeah.
yeah I've never read Dune, so you
Oh my
take that
gosh,
one.
yeah. Yeah, Dune, literally the first page is looks like a completely different language. there's a glossary in the back of Dune to explain what they say, and I guess that's what you're thinking about hard sci-fi,
Right.
right?
Like
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, I would consider the Silmarillion like hard sci-fi, like
Oh,
the whole
definitely.
world with an index in the back, an extra 150 pages. That's what they're basing the new Amazon show off. Actually, it's just the indices on the back of the books. But yeah, so Star Wars, like you said, the original trilogy is soft sci-fi, right? It's Force is this unknown thing. Han is like whatever. That's some Coolidge weird, and we just kind of get the sense that it's like there, but we don't really know how it works. And in Phantom Menace, Qui-Gon, the reason I like it is because it's so brief and it's so like
Hmm.
how I wonder that how do they find force sensitive beings? How do they know? How do they sense quote unquote other Jedi or whatever? So Lucas decides he's gonna make the pivot from soft to hard sci-fi and go into just directly explaining what midichlorians are, which is like I think Qui-Gon says they're like symbiotes basically. They're like organisms within you that enable you to have powers that the force comes with. The thing I don't like is that it essentially reduces the force to this like religion around something very scientific. It kind of
Yeah.
debunks the belief behind the force in a way.
True.
But
True.
I do like how him and Obi-Wan use it to make Anakin a big deal. That's the first time we're like, holy crap, this kid is like, you know, special, right? You know Anakin is Darth Vader if you've seen the original movies, but if you hadn't, you're like, oh, it's just some kid. And Qui-Gon is like, this kid's more powerful than Yoda? Has more midichlorians than Yoda? Like this, to me, it's just a way to measure how powerful someone is, and I think that's really cool. I think that makes a lot more sense when you talk about like the Inquisitors and how they're able to find Force users and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I don't know. I found it interesting and enlightening about the universe, and I love world building. I don't want it to get too heavy handed, but you know sometimes maybe straight to that, but enjoy the scene when he's using the blood count much that he pricked Anakin without his consent, but whatever. He just said and took his blood. He was like, "Ow, what are you
Yeah.
doing?" He goes, "Oh, checking for infections." You liar. But I really, I enjoyed the midichlorian stuff overall. I don't know what are your thoughts in general, like storytelling, like how you prefer a more vague kind of let you explore those things or a more specific.
No, actually, uh, I may be simple-minded, but I love to see how. Or I guess I'm the opposite of simple-minded because I love to see how everything works, the innards of everything. I love to see paths connected this way. So I do love hard sci-fi with a passion. That's why I love books like Dune, The Course of Silmarillion. I love reading that because, like, I don't know, you feel like a sense of accomplishment whenever you get through a book
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Because you're like, wow, that is just like it's like a new language, really. You
Yeah.
finish that. So I really do like to see the beginnings. That's why I love the lore so much, is exploring Wikipedia, different YouTube videos. I love this hard sci-fi, and I love to see the Force explained as, like you said, symbiotes inside you,
Yeah.
rather than just a mysterious, well, for lack of a better word, again, force that's around like every single one, uh,
Yeah.
every
And
single
it's
person.
described in other movies as like a life form.
Yeah,
So it made sense to me that Qui-Gon would be like, yeah, it's a life form. It's just biotic with you, and everyone has them. Just some people have way more than others, and some people are Anakin, and they're like they have like 30,000, or what Obi-Wan said. So, uh,
definitely.
um,
That also does bring up George Lucas's like initial vision for his sequel trilogy before he sold the rights to Disney. He was going to explore the like the the Force as midichlorians. It was going to be purely focused on these microscopic beings. That's what the sequel trilogy was going to be about. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if I'm that hard sci-fi,
yeah, we
but
might have been
that was
saved from that.
yeah. But what
Was he gonna do
evil
like a
has
Magic
replaced it?
School Bus series? What?
Imagine the Millennium Falcon as the Magic School Bus, just
Another
shrinking
field
down
trip today, Arnold. We're
with the
going to the
sheave. No
midichlorians.
way. Cruising down, no, of course not. Living life and feeling.
So I guess we can get into some criticisms of the movie.
Let's.
I think we're almost at an hour of
Yeah.
runtime, so talk about Watto. I
Mm,
I'm not sure. I don't want to be the guy that's like George
me either.
Lucas is this, and this, but I mean,
At the same time, it's so clear. It's clear as day, man.
it's supposed to be I think it's intentional. It's supposed to be like a Jewish joke that he's
Did not age well. It
no.
there's some things you shouldn't really joke about, and that's one of them. Of course, you do see you're kind of introduced to the way that I can't even describe this with the Trade Federation, the their
Floridians.
accents. Yeah, their accents.
Yeah.
You're kind of like, oh, so that's where this is going down. And then you meet Watto, of course, and does he have a yarmulke? He has something like a yarmulke, right? Or am I just like
I think it's the
going
nose
crazy?
that
Yeah,
everyone is. And to me, when he says, what does he say?
that's
Well, the way he says it, and the way that like when Qui-Gon is like trying to do mind tricks or something like that, I think, and he goes,
yeah,
mind tricks don't work on me, and he's like, only money, and it's just like this like really has a
yeah,
has an accent to it that's like a little too close to like
yeah. He could have
Yiddish
done
accent.
better.
Yeah, it's tough for sure, and I know it's a sticky subject, but I really it's not something I know you notice as a kid, not something you just kind of laugh at it because
No,
it's like I think it's funny, but then when you're like 18, 19, 20, whatever, and then
like,
someone else
oh
says it, and you're like, really? And then you go rewatch it, and you're like, oh my
my God.
gosh, that is definitely one thing I just didn't. I love the idea of Tatooine as a rogue world, slavery still intact, and Anakin has to be in a way rescued from that. But he's such a strong force of will that he's been able to be impervious to like falling into crime or like
Hmm.
trying to run away and stuff they say about like if you run away like there's like a bomb like planted inside of you.
Yeah, they say
That
it's like a
like
one-off sentence. Yeah,
yes, and it's that stuff's so dark, but it's so like and such good world building. And then he ruined it with Otto to me. Like it's
hmm
you just had to make that the character, that you're going
yeah,
after. I really, I enjoy the storytelling there. I think it's really powerful, especially when he has to leave his mother. I think it's yeah, but I just man, that's the Watto stuff is tough, and I know you said last episode that Vader kills Watto at some point.
I believe so. Yeah,
Maybe we'll see that in Kenobi. That would be kind of funny.
let's hope
Um, but
redemption arc.
yeah, one thing I didn't really pick up on until I rewatched it was the gambling stuff with Qui-Gon.
Oh
For
yeah,
some reason,
the chance dice.
it never clicked with me that he was gambling Anakin's pod and the Nubian ship. Like he's like, hey, if I it was always pretty clear, like, hey, if I win, I just get the stuff for the repairs, and I take and later he wants Anakin, but he just wants stuff for the repairs, and he's like, if I lose, keep my ship. That's it. And but then later when he does the force to make the chance die go his way, which is hilarious because screw Watto, I mean he deserved it.
Hmm.
But and he demands Anakin, but he also fronts the pod, which is funny because like if he lost, Anakin stays in slavery and he loses his most treasured possession, which is his pod racer that he's built from scratch. I'm like, Qui-Gon, what are you doing?
Yeah, and they just hitch a ride off world from Mos Espa, and then they leave Anakin alone with no pod,
Yeah, I don't know.
which they
That's
they could have done. Now
also
that it's an afterthought now, but you know,
yeah, but the I really love Padme's ship. I think is sick.
oh yeah,
Um,
just the
so
chrome.
sleek. Yeah, I was gonna talk about that earlier. I was talking about the visuals and her
Hmm.
ship. It's literally like I think it's an Attack of the Clones. You remember the dart
Yeah,
that I think
I don't the
it's Django
assassin. I know.
shoots the
Oh, is it
assassin.
Jingo? Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Anakin pulls it out. And it's like this little silver triangle thing. That's kind of what the ship looks like. It's just this very sleek,
Hmm.
like silver. It just looks so cool, and it's so fast. And also the N1 starfighters that we see at the end of the movie that we just saw pop back up in Boba Fett. Very cool. And they can spin, which is a good trick. So, let's see.
Just that thing. Another thing that didn't really work for me, and in episode one at least, was just the character of Darth Maul. I don't think they went about him the right. I mean, there's so many things you have to pack into a movie that's what, less than 2 hours, and I understand why they didn't, like, expand on Darth Maul, but this is for people watching from the original trilogy, seeing this in 1999. This is like the first Sith that we hear about them in the original trilogy, and we're like, oh, like they amp him up, and then you see him for the first time, and he gets cut in half, and then you think, oh, he's dead. Like it kind of sets the Sith up for failure, in my opinion. I just wish they moved around some things, maybe made the Tatooine bit just a bit smaller, because you're right. Once they're off of Tatooine, the movie ends like really quickly. Everything just
I think
the final act just rushes through.
I think I clocked hour 22 when they land in Coruscant. It's an hour and 22 minutes, and then they're on
That's
Tatooine
crazy.
for probably an hour. And they bounce back and forth. I think they go back to Coruscant to see Palpatine once, and they go back to Naboo to see and Boss Nass. But they're on Tatooine for like 50 minutes. I mean, it's a long time. And I wish we could have gotten. I mean, Maul has like 3 lines. Like he barely speaks. So for the longest time, that I didn't think that was his thing. But I mean, you watch Clone Wars, the guy won't shut up. He's always like meditating on some like injustice that he's faced that he needs to put right, or some like arc vision that he has that he's gonna accomplish. And in Phantom Menace, he's just like. He is a Phantom. He's a Phantom Menace. He just doesn't talk. He's barely on screen. He's on screen for like 3 minutes total. I don't know. And he chews up the scenes when he's in them.
Oh yeah, that's all I thought about as a kid. Just Darth Maul. I had all the toys. I had a Darth Maul lunchbox. He was such a cool character, and I just wish they gave him a little more treatment, a little more polish in the final cut. I don't know, just to hear about these things in the original trilogy, I can only imagine sitting in the theaters and watching like basically the devil get cut down real quick, and you're like, oh, that's it? Like that's it?
I talked about this a lot with my brother actually, because he was older. He's 6 years older than me, so he's like prime viewing age when these movies start coming back out. We talked about how if we got a chance to rewrite the prequels, we would start with Anakin. We would maybe have some sort of like time catch-up thing where Anakin was like 15 for most of the first movie, and Maul was the main villain for like Sidious was there, but Maul was the main kind of enforcer for the whole 3 movies.
I like that idea.
Like a building like Obi-Wan versus Maul back and forth. And you can have Qui-Gon in there, but like they're coming together like once an episode kind of thing, and then they finally fight at the beginning of episode 3. Like instead of Dooku, it's Maul, and then we have the Obi-Wan and Anakin stuff. And it just, I don't know, I felt like there was so much promise there with that character to be on the silver screen, and we got him on the small screen, and that's fine. Clone Wars is incredible. Rebels is incredible.
We got him 30 seconds on the silver screen for Solo.
Solo, yeah.
And that's it.
And his little spider wheelchair thing. But yeah, that had so much promise, and it just kind of faded away. And it's still sick. I mean, it's honestly just cool. And I love that. And Obi-Wan is bouncing when like after Qui-Gon dies. Obi-Wan's standing there in front of the red gate. If you're listening and you want to go rewatch the movie, or just rewatch that scene. He's like, it's incredible acting. It's Ewan McGregor at his like finest. I don't know if it was directing or if it was improvisation or both. Man, he's like so mad. He can't wait to kill them all. And he's like bouncing up and down on his toes, and then it goes choo-choo, and like the little red thing goes away.
And he comes out swinging, dude.
I know, he comes out going crazy. So that was my childhood, was like that fight. So I reenacted that with my friends so many times as like a 7-year-old. Like I'm just like we pick parts and run at each other. And, yeah, little Toys R Us lightsabers, you know?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, those little lightsabers that you flick out and it extends.
Yeah. Yeah, they
Yeah,
were like hard plastic. Yeah.
those are actually making a comeback now.
They-
One of the first merchandise items for the Obi-Wan Kenobi show got leaked, and it's his lightsaber, but it's like the retractable ones. It's like
I might have
it's
to
like a
snag it.
Walmart. Yeah.
If it's like $10, I won't get one. What are you talking about?
Definitely. It has a little, like, I don't know if you know, but with Lego sets, Star Wars Lego sets, they kind of have a theme around them. And sometimes they have like a little drawing of Darth Vader in the corner, kind of indicating, oh, this takes place during the original trilogy. Or they have Darth Maul in the corner, it's like, oh, this takes place during the Clone Wars. This set does. On the lightsaber box, there's a picture of Obi-Wan, which is drawn, of course, but it supposedly it's going to be what he looks like in the Obi-Wan show, which he has a hood, his hair is a little bit razzled, his beard is graying a little bit. So I guess that's really our first official look at Obi-Wan in the Kenobi show, not to derail us from Phantom Menace. But yeah, moral of the story, those lightsabers are making a comeback, and I don't know why I spent $300 on a lightsaber at Galaxy's Edge when those things are still existing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just one last, well, two last things. I have things. Ace Windu,
Hmm.
the hubris of this man, the
Oh my
gall
God.
of this man, to sit there and lean back in his chair when Qui-Gon is like, there was a vergence in the Force. I fought this guy. He was well trained in basically like the dark arts of the Force. That's basically what he says. He's like, dude, this guy might be a Sith, man. And Yoda and Mace look at each other, and Mace leans back and he's like, Sith have been gone for 1,000 years. They never dare come back with us here. That's literally
Yeah.
like, you serious, man? That is the way that you combat. Like, that is like Cornelius Fudge level ignorance. And I was just like, I was like mad at him rewatching. I was like, what are you
Yeah,
doing, man? It's right
dude,
there.
just I love this Mace Windu hate train right now. Because Mace Windu is really the hubris of the Jedi, just personified in a douchebag.
Uh,
He's man, he is not likable. And I mean, Sam Jackson does an amazing job as Mace Windu, being this pretentious Jedi through and through. You know, the values of a Jedi and the Order are just like resonate off of him. Unfortunately, way too much.
like in Revenge of the Sith, when he is after Anakin gives him the key to defeating the growing
Hmm.
Sith threat, he's like taps him on the shoulder. He's like, "Thanks, buddy. You can't come."
Yeah,
And
sit
it's like,
this one out.
what? Like, you gotta
Yeah,
appease this guy. You know he's a little crazy. Just let him come along.
yeah.
To me, Mace Windu's fault that Darth Vader became who he was,
Hmm.
and completely, Anakin made his choices. He was fueled and he was instigated by Mace Windu's ignorance and his hubris and his ability to, or his belief that Jedi code would trump all, and that everyone was just gonna adhere to it no matter what, and you could just throw feelings out of the window and not, try and take care of someone when they're going through something like their mother dying or they're having to hide their baby. You know what I mean? Like he
Definitely. You
didn't
just,
care about stuff
I
like
just
that.
have to imagine the years between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, just Mace Windu antagonizing Anakin. Like, that dude must have been on his butt just literally 24/7. Like,
Like, oh, we shouldn't even be training you. You're too
yeah.
old. Yeah.
Just imagine. I mean, I would murder younglings after he
Okay.
taught me
Whoa.
that. Whoa.
Whoa now.
No, but no, I don't know. When you see the people that were in Anakin's early life, you can kind of put those puzzle pieces together and be like, oh, this
He
is why
was
he
he was
became
let down
who he
by his
is.
environment.
Oh
That
yeah,
was
yeah. Imagine leaving your mother for an order that doesn't believe that you're supposed to be there, and they constantly, as you're growing in to be the Jedi that you really want to be, people are just throwing you down. I mean, he had Obi-Wan, which is great. He would have fell so much sooner if Qui-Gon probably.
yeah.
I don't know actually. I don't know what.
Well,
That's something I have
let's
to think
just
about.
say let's just say Yoda, you're not off the hook. We'll talk about you next week.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
you make some very questionable choices in how you handle any situation. So you're not off the hook, my little good friend. That was the sixth quote for you. I guess one last thing. He kind of confronted in this movie with a Star Wars trope, really a fantasy trope in general, of the power of choice, the hero's
Mhm.
burden, of being a prophecy not making you who you are, you still get to choose who you are. And we see
Mhm.
this in, we see Harry Potter's the big one. We see this in Lord of the Rings. Frodo, the ring falls to him. Technically, he doesn't really have to do it. He can pass it off to Gandalf. He can pass it off to Elrond. He can do
He
what
can
he
wipe his
wants.
hands of it,
Ultimately, it
yeah.
was his choice. So when Anakin is presented with the opportunity to go to the Jedi Temple, this really stirring scene at the table. I really love. Like 2 minutes. It's Jar Jar's there, which kind of ruins it with his sticking his tongue out and grabbing the apples off the table.
Yeah.
But it's really touching scene where it's like Qui-Gon, Padme, Shmi, Anakin, and Obi-Wan. No, Obi-Wan's not there. They're all sitting there discussing the Jedi Order, and he asks Qui-Gon, you must be a Jedi. I saw your laser sword, and he's like, well, how did you know I was a Jedi? And I could have killed a Jedi and took his weapon. And he goes, oh, Jedi can't die. No one can kill a Jedi. And Qui-Gon just kind of pauses, and he's like, wish that were true. And it kind of sets the stakes for Anakin. He's about to leave. And so he offered his freedom when he wins pod racing, the pod race of Boonta Eve, and he takes it. Then he realizes his mother isn't coming. It's just like a heartbreaking, like, what about mom? That's what he says. And his mom crouches down. You know, he's so small, and she's like, Anakin, this is what you've dreamed of. This is the path that has been set before you. It's your choice, but you've got to make this choice. And that to me stuck out as like a meta narrative of the story of we all may have a path set before us, but it's still our choice. And in Anakin's case, he had this prophecy that he was going to balance the Force, but he also just
Mm.
a routine level like had a choice to leave his mom, had a choice to go to the land that he always wanted to go to in Coruscant and train and live out his dream. But he's scared of the change, and he's scared of leaving Tatooine. And his mom's like, what are you talking about? Like, go. And she says, you can't stop the change any more than you can stop the suns from setting. And just that whole like 3 minute
Such a good
sequence
line.
is amazing. And that is, to me, is George Lucas at his best. And I think that the power of choice, the power of choosing your destiny rather than it having like put on you, right, is one that's going to continue through all the movies, as we'll see later. Anakin could have chosen to just run away with Padme. Could have pulled an Ahsoka and left the Order. He could have done so many things that would have turned out better for himself and for the galaxy, but he chose what he chose.
Definitely.
And that's something that Curry go not all like, yay, little boy to go to Coruscant. Like
Hmm.
that's not what it is for the rest of the series. It's unfortunate, but yeah, that really hit me as I was watching, especially just the scenes with his mother and with Liam Neeson is great in this movie, and shout out George Lucas for that.
Yeah, also, what you just said, amazing. Uh, you put that in a way that's just got emotional. And yeah, the power of choice is a huge theme in these movies. And I'm happy and I'm excited and happy to explore it in these next few episodes of the podcast.
I will be running back to the microphone just like Palpatine on that walking hologram Spider-Man thing where he's moving as he's walking. um, like I'm excited for next week's. We're doing Attack of the Clones next week and beyond. So we're gonna try and get through all the movies before Kenobi. I think we have enough time for that.
If we don't,
And
we'll crunch
if
some
not,
in.
we can skip Solo and Rogue One and do those
Yeah,
at a later time.
come back
We
to
can
those.
just do the saga. Yeah, but we're really excited to keep looking into all things Star Wars, Rebels, Clone Wars, Bad Batch, which I still need to watch, the new novels that are coming out. I'm gonna brush up on my Thrawn stuff this spring
Oh, you're
just
gonna need to.
because the
Yeah,
Ahsoka series is
yeah, you're
coming,
gonna
and
need to.
we will be we will probably do an emergency podcast at some point if a Kenobi trailer ever drops.
Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely. Emergency reaction, emergency, just
yeah,
everything.
yeah, we'll figure out how to do it. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think that about wraps it for tonight.
Yeah, it
Thanks
was a
for
pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for hopping on. I know for those who are listening, we record these around midnight on either Wednesday
Yeah.
or Thursday nights, just because both of us have really different schedules.
Mhm.
I'm still in school, and Hunter works late nights, so we're grinding out all for the sake of Star Wars and
Wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, I would,
yep.
but it's nice,
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
abandon life for a little bit and talk about Star Wars. It's awesome. So yeah, this episode of the podcast will be uploaded to YouTube just like the first episode was. You can follow us on YouTube at the Kessel Rundown. Give us a little like, subscribe. Same thing goes for Twitter. We upload just random Star Wars news, facts, and stuff. And we also post this podcast to Spotify under the Kessel Rundown. So if you want to follow us there, scrub through the
Our
podcast. What?
Twitter is at Kessel Rundown. No the. It's just at
Yeah.
Kessel Rundown. So
Yeah, if you want to follow us, get notified whenever a new episode airs, whenever anything really airs, honestly, because I've been thinking about streaming some Lego Star Wars Complete Saga or just Jedi Fallen Order when I figure out how to stream that without my computer exploding. It'd be great. Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to see the future of all of this.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, good talking to you, and I'll see you back next week.
Yeah, see you next week, same time, same place.
All right.
All right, thank you guys. Bye bye.